Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidell.
And I'm your co-host, Duke Oishi.
In our show this week, we'll cover the recent ThinkTech HVCA lunch and panel program on who is driving transportation in Hawaii and where in the world are we going.
We had 10 panelists, each covering a different facet of our state transportation system. To be sure, it's a huge subject and hard to get our hands around, but it's critical to our economy. With all its moving parts, some say it's the biggest industry in the state, but it seems clear that we haven't spent enough time or money on it.
Are things just fine with transportation in Hawaii? There seems to be a huge disconnect between the congestion and potholes in a destination resort that is itself dependent on transportation. Will the new war against potholes help? We've heard that before. Will we do better this time?
Why do we still have 2 traffic jurisdictions in Oahu? Wouldn't one be more efficient? Our roads and traffic control systems are visibly inadequate. Our bus system is being left behind. Why aren't there more bikes? Why are the roads so dangerous?
Airfares are going higher. Neighbor island families can't get to see each other. There's no super ferry, and even the idea of an inter-island ferry seems to be off the table. And for a lot of people, completely forgotten.
Will the billions we're spending on rail to Kapolei fill in for the lack of transportation infrastructure around Oahu and the state? We're way behind without a comprehensive plan.
For the first thing in the program, we had opening remarks from Senator Kalanai English, chair of the Senate Transportation and International Affairs Committee. He raised important issues, and his comments were candid and thoughtful.
You know, the way that we're set up, we have 3 distinct departments within the transportation sector, and that's harbors, highways, and airports. So that's how the state divides up the pie, so to speak. You know, some of the questions that were asked for me is, well, are we doing a good job? I don't think we are, because you touched on a few things, and part of it is that we're dealing with some antiquated systems. We're dealing with a civil service system that doesn't allow for innovation or new ideas to come in. In other words, and I'll translate that, we have some engineers that are very good at what they do, but they learned 40 years ago. So they're still, like when we talk about integrated street management, you know, they're saying, well, we just put in a street and that's what we do. So until they retire, we cannot get the new innovation into the thinking. That's one of the big issues. Now, I'm going to touch on each of the 3 areas very briefly. The first part is surface transportation. It's the roads. You brought up an interesting question. You know, every year for the last probably 8 years, I've been introducing in the legislature a bill to move the transportation section down to the counties. I really do believe in home rule. It's interesting that every year the counties will testify against this. Our Constitution requires us, if we move anything to the counties, that we also give them the funding. So it would come with billions of dollars worth of funding. But the counties continually say no. They don't want it. They don't want to deal with this. They don't want all the roads. So then the opposite might come in. Should the state take all the roads? You know, way back in the Republic of Hawaii in 1899, there was called the Highways Act that passed, which still governs us today. And under the Republic, the idea was that Hawaii, all of the roads belonged to the government. And then when the Americans took over here, the Americans said you have county governments, and then they also said you have to divide up the roads. So very shortly after incorporation into the United States, we had this fight early on between the counties and the state, so and the territory. And the territory said, okay, they're going to take the major roads, and the counties will take the roads that services the small communities. Fast forward, that's about 100 years ago, 1914. Then fast forward to shortly after statehood, 1963. Again, we try to deal with this issue. The counties, the state passes a law that says these are our roads and the rest belong to the counties. The counties refuse to accept them, saying that they have to take the roads by ordinance. Hence, we have this thing called roads in limbo. So where are the roads in limbo? Well, Prospect Street here in Oahu is a road in limbo. It's neither county nor state. And the issue with airports is that there's the money there. It's just that the governing body that governs that money, the airlines committees, needs to work stronger to agree on things and get things moving. You know, we can't touch that money. So they put the money in. They can figure out how to do it. We have terrible airports. I fly almost every day, and they're terrible. Go to Maui Airport. Go to the Honolulu Airport. But it's very difficult for us to get 21 or 20, I forget the number of competing airlines, to agree on fix theirs first and then ours. Well, that creates a competitive advantage for them now, doesn't it? So we have stalemate at the airport. Harbors. We tried our best. I authorized about $1 billion worth of expenditures to modernize our harbors, and this was done 6 years ago. And I don't care who the governor is, I don't care who the people are there, fix the harbors, because the numbers are very, very scary. But for the recession in 2007, we would have ships stacked out here waiting to offload their cargo, which means higher prices for everyone here.
Then our moderator, Dave Rolf, Executive Director of the Hawaii Automobile Dealers Association, introduced the subject and panelists on the program. He was a terrific moderator, undaunted by the challenge of moderating a panel as complex as this one.
I have to say, just Senator English's opening remarks are just worth the whole price of admission. I mean, I had no idea that prospect wasn't fish or fowl. I mean, you've got to be able to figure that out somehow. So anyway, we ask each speaker to come up with a word to sum everything, and that's one of Jay's ideas. It's just a fabulous idea. The word I've chosen is epoch. I think that's how the British say it. And I believe that we can be at the beginning of a golden epoch. I think that Hawaii can set transportation as the sector we're going to focus on. You're going to hear from 10 people tell you some great ideas, and it's a privilege for me to be here and talk about it. Let's begin a golden epoch. And let's begin, too, with welcoming Peter Ingram from Hawaiian Airlines.
We then heard from 10 sequential panelists, each with an anecdotal vignette covering a different facet of the transportation system in our state.
There are a number of things that work very well for aviation here in Hawaii. We have the luxury of some great schedules. Lots of flights, lots of frequencies to places people want to fly in the neighbor islands, and also a great selection of nonstop destinations to major cities throughout North America and throughout Asia. And a lot of this is supported, in fact, by the fact that we're a terrific draw as a tourist destination, and those tourists not only bringing economic vitality to our economy, but they also help support that level of frequency that we all benefit from. And we know transportation is so important when you are an island state, separated in its own right by water, but also separate from the rest of the world by great distances and an awful lot of water.
Why are prices of transportation going up? And the little cartoon says at the bottom, this flight is totally booked, but from $100 I can get you a seat in the lavatory. So we'll try to answer the question of why are prices going up. We'll talk about two things: cargo, mainly on water, a little bit on freight, but mainly water, and passenger. So we're going to talk about cargo. There's one name that, how many people in the room know the name Salt Chuck? Okay, you all need to know this name. This is a $2.2 billion corporation. It's headquartered in Washington State, and it dominates Hawaii, Alaska, and Puerto Rico air and sea freight markets. In Hawaii, it owns Young Brothers, Hawaiian Tug and Barge, Aloha Air Cargo, Maui Petroleum, Hawaii Petroleum, HFN, and Minute Stop on Maui. It's a powerful player, and Salt Chuck is a name I want everybody to remember here. Salt Chuck essentially has a monopoly, it's cut off on the top here, on inter-island, oh there we go, thank you, on inter-island cargo. Obviously Aloha Air Cargo is the dominant inter-island dedicated carrier. Young Brothers is the dominant water carrier, and Hawaiian Tug and Barge tows most of the other barges inter-island. Pasha, which is really the only competitor today, inter-island, has bi-weekly inter-island roll-on, roll-off vessels and has less than 1% of the market share.
So my word is connectivity. So I'll start by sharing my federal perspective. I'm here representing the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 9. I'm based here in Honolulu. And I went back and read through President Obama's State of the Union speech, and I just have 3 quotes from him. After years of talking about it, we are finally poised to control our own energy future. We have doubled the distance our cars go on a gallon of gas and the amount of renewable energy we generate from sources like wind and solar. And over the last 4 years, our emissions of the dangerous carbon pollutants that threaten our planet have actually fallen.
2005, when I was hired as the IT director, Honolulu was ranked as having the worst IT system in the nation. We're the 10th largest municipality in the nation, and in 2005 we had the worst IT system in the nation. I'll just give you an example. I had rain gutters in my data center. In the data center. In November of 2011, the Center for Digital Government recognized the city of Honolulu as the #1 digital city in the nation. And my budget was exactly the same as it was in 2005. How's that? That's a wow. That's a wow. That's an incredible wow. And I'll talk to you about some of the things that happened. So during those times, we repurposed money that was again thrown down the toilet literally, and we were able to put in new financial systems, new infrastructure, all kinds of amazing things that enabled a lot of things to happen.
There's an ocean of hydrogen staring us right in the face, which is a source of fuel that we can use from now and forever. So my one word is infrastructure, because I believe infrastructure is the key for a transportation solution, a hydrogen transportation solution here in Hawaii. So why hydrogen? Well, first of all, a few comments. First of all, a fuel cell car is an electric vehicle without range anxiety. It's over 300 miles range per fill. Has the same consumer experience as a gasoline-fueled car. Can be fueled in less than 5 minutes.
My one word is information. Transportation is a complex phenomenon. Often there are trade-offs that must be made, unintended consequences, and interrelationships that have to be considered. Plus, we live on an island where land itself is a finite resource. For all of these reasons, any decision-making really should be, in my opinion, informed decision-making. And I can illustrate what I mean through a short example. Let's assume the biggest transportation issue on Oahu is congestion. I know that's a stretch, but go with me. And we want to get really serious about addressing it. And somebody says, let's tax gasoline at $10 a gallon. That's going to solve the problem. Now, there are always going to be winners and losers in any decision.
So thanks for the opportunity to present you my opinion about, what's the future of transportation in Hawaii. It's not going to be very good, so, burp, feel good, and let's go with it. So let's take it down, the list. Honolulu has among the worst quality roads. We know that, number one. Number two, Honolulu has among the worst traffic congestion, particularly among peer cities. Number three, Honolulu has among the highest rates of drunken driving. To solve all these highway-related problems, Honolulu ordered a $5 billion train. The unquestionable and unpredictable result is that all these problems will get far worse by the time the train is installed. And by then, Honolulu will be short on transportation funds. With less funding, there is no doubt that congestion, maintenance, and safety problems will get worse.
The city should take another hard look, not another hard look, any kind of look, at the BRT program, the bus rapid transit, as a transit improvement rather than rail. And here's why. In 2003, Parsons Brinckerhoff, the city, and the Federal Transit Administration finalized an environmental impact statement, EIS, for the BRT project. This EIS concluded that BRT was the preferable alternative for Honolulu because rail transit was, quote, intrusive on the visual environment, divisive of communities, and too expensive, unquote.
My word is choice. I choose to bike and ride the bus for 90% of my transportation needs, and we're dedicated to making that choice available to more people. In fact, I'm going to say choose the silver bullet, because I think bicycling is the silver bullet to our transportation problems. You don't believe me? Well, I have some words that start with F. The reason I bike, one is financial. I'd be spending $4,000 on a car, and our family already has 3 of them, so I'm going to save $4,000 by doing that. And even after spending $660 on an annual bus pass, I'm still saving $3,400 a year.
So I had to think of a word, and I think the word is us. The word is us because it's about our behavior and our culture and our values that drives, we are both the solution and the problem to many of the things that you've heard people talk about. The land use pattern is what drives transportation. No one gets in their car just for the purposes of driving. It's to get from one spot to another. And so our value about what kind of life we want to lead drives those decisions. Most of what you see built here is primarily single-family homes or high-end residential towers. Those residential towers tend to serve the tourist and investor industry. But our decision is that we prefer living in single-family homes.
All in all, these sequential vignettes on transportation were very informative, and some were quite provocative and evoked a myriad of Q&A. The participants that came down were pleased with the discussion.
Oh, it was a great panel.
It was excellent, yeah. In particular, I love Panos' remarks.
Most people don't see all this kind of background information about, for example, the monopoly on the inter-island water transportation. That was an eye-opener.
When you said you're going to have 10 people speak on transportation, I said, yeah, it's as diverse as why we can't do anything about transportation. But this was fantastic. It was great.
Oh, very vibrant panel. A lot of information, even things I didn't know.
I thought it was really good. A lot of varied comments and ideas.
We have a lawsuit right now to try to rid Hawaii, at least Hawaii, and hopefully Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Guam of the Jones Act restriction.
Reactivate the super ferry, please.
Yeah, what about that?
It's not possible. The ships are gone. Act 213 is in place, and there really isn't enough money or the ability to bring that back. It's a shame. It was great while it lasted. It was halted by the Supreme Court, and we're in a different era now. I wish it could return, but I honestly don't see an easy way for that to happen.
Well, I think the ideas were very good. Everything was excellent. And the one thing that, being from Maui and living in Hana, so one thing that I noticed is that the entire discussion was on Oahu. And we forget that we are a multi-island state. So for me, I have to always remind people that we have an intermodal transportation system. Someone said there isn't a ferry system. Well, there is, because we have ferry between Lahaina and Molokai and Lanai.
I use the word epoch because that means a beginning. It means a beginning, so you can look back to this moment that you all put together here. Jay, you did, and the venture capital people and ThinkTech, and you can say, okay, where did it begin? Where did we all sit down and figure out how to do it?
What this panel provided was a good collection of ideas, and they're all important, frankly.
I think we got a lot of good information. I learned some really interesting things. I think Panos, really tells it like it is, and that whole notion that EVs really aren't as efficient because of the high cost of electricity.
I thought people felt that biking could be an alternative, and most people are afraid, so we can do some of those bike lanes when the city does its repaving. That will cut down the fear factor.
I think what Terry Ware said about us is probably the most important thing. We kind of bring this on ourselves to a very large extent. As Poca said, we've met the enemy and he is us.
I really enjoy listening to Tim Dick. I think he has a lot to share.
It's very interesting to get a perspective on the passion that people have for the traffic, and it was great to see the difference of opinions.
This program was one of the best I've attended, Jay, and I want to thank you and your team for putting this together.
Transportation is an ongoing issue for our community and our quality of life in Hawaii. It's a moving target, a challenge we have to stay focused on every day, and one we have to keep on discussing, especially with our elected representatives. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. Drive Time radio series on KGU 760 AM continues this week. Tune in to 760 AM for Energy on Wednesday, Asia in Review on Thursday, and ThinkTech Fridays on Friday. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech Radio.
On March 28th, the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and ThinkTech will present another luncheon panel program at the Plaza Club entitled How Your Favorite Bills Are Doing in the 2013 Legislature and How Things Are Different Under Different Leadership. Bob Toyofuku of Hawaii Advocates will moderate. Sign up for these programs on hvca.org.
And now here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
We ask our speakers to give us one word to characterize their thinking on this. And first and foremost, I think the one that was even repeated most often was information. Whether it be information about bus schedules, information about traffic problems, information about plans and what's going to be done to address infrastructure, as well as access to data that otherwise was kept in silos in the different departments. And I think Gordon Bruce, who talked about the sort of the open data project in the city, showed that access to information can really move things along. However, with regards to infrastructure, I think one of the big concerns that came to light is the procurement process and how that really stifles getting things done. I think one of our speakers mentioned there were 13 separate steps that one had to go through to to fix anything. And of course, they didn't talk about permits. I guess the city and state can deal with that, but seems like the procurement system is pretty sick, if that's the case. I thought there were some things that I never really thought of. Of course, Panos is always interesting and has some good sound bites. One of his sound bites, which surprised me, but it sort of makes sense. He was saying that even though you can get 90 miles per gallon, so to speak, on a electric vehicle, that since our cost of electricity is 3 times higher than the mainland, you're actually getting 30 miles per gallon, and that's not much better than today's best 4-cylinder gas guzzlers. So I thought that was sort of interesting. He always likes to tell it like it is. I think the other thing is to have choices. Right now we don't have a real safe bike system. Chad Taniguchi really helped clarify that, and we don't know the law. I mean, I didn't know until he mentioned it that it's legal for a biker to be in the right lane and take up the middle of the lane and go as fast or slow as they want. I think it was a good program, and I look forward to doing an update sometime in the future.
Yeah, you wonder what the update would be, because I think we did a broad brush on this. We came at it from all sides, every side that we could find. We really turned some rocks over, to find some things that nobody knew. Tim Dick's discussion of the salt chuck and the barging industry between the islands. That was really, really interesting knockout stuff. That's why we let him have the unique opportunity to do PowerPoint, which we don't usually encourage. But I mean, learning things that we didn't know before. What it suggests to me is that in the update, we should find something in this landscape of things we didn't know and drill down on that. Yeah.
Well, for example, the person from the EPA, Asia Yeary, she brought up. I really thought this was funny because she says, we have some new exciting EPA regulations to implement. And, who other than a bureaucrat would think that new regulations are exciting? That just knocked me out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was an interesting group. I'm happy it came together the way it came together. Interesting that a lot of the officials who were dealing with rail were busy that day and couldn't make it. They were at a HART meeting, and they couldn't make our program. But I don't think we lost out for that at all, because we had a fair amount of discussion about that as one of the elements. And, you know, we didn't want rail to just subsume everything else, and it didn't. Well, I think we've really sort of let transportation go. To me, that's a common denominator. We haven't paid attention to it. We haven't recognized the fact that a state with a better transportation system has a better economy. Just like energy, a state with better energy has a better economy.
They mentioned that transportation is, in fact, by the numbers, represents a third of our economic activity.
Yeah, and interesting, if you look at it from the Hawaii energy policy side, transportation is the biggest problem because we haven't done anything. I mean, I think there's a lot of issues, and they affect every one of us. They affect all parts of the society of the state. And to me, that was a great takeaway point. I don't think we can forget this, and I think you and we should remind them about it from time to time.
Good idea, Jay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Great program.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech, but first we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates MECO on Maui and Helco on the Big Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle & Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Okay, Duke, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Maria Kashem does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
For sure, Jay. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or a volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Jay Fidell. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. See you then.
I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.
ThinkTech is awesome. My name is DJ.